having organic conversations about childhood, creating that safe space between the two of you, the sooner you can create that in your relationship, the better your marriage will be, because you open up the ability to have the healthy communication about your childhood, about why you think and do the things you do. And then you all can better understand and give each other grace in different areas as you're growing together, because you're doing life with somebody. That means life, right?
Right. Welcome back to the Express Yourself Black Man podcast. My name is Kizzle, or Kofi, and I'm a mental health advocate, public speaker, and founder of a Kizzle brand, which is a project aimed at raising awareness for depression and helping people through difficult times. Studies show that on average, men lose 2.8 years of their life when they're under heavy stress. The point of this podcast is for me to gain those 2.8 years back. As a Black man, society often tries to tell me what I can't do, or talk about, which can often leave me feeling trapped. And so this podcast is my release. All right, what's up, y'all? We're here with Lachauna. Lachauna is a civil rights attorney and a marriage strategist. Lachauna, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. I think we're going to have a dope conversation. I'm really excited about it. So we could just honestly just hop straight into it. And I just wanted to ask you, so I saw your platform, I saw what you do, and I was like, yo, she would be dope to have on a podcast. She talks about a lot of the stuff that I think my listeners would be interested in. So I wanted to know, you have an interesting background where you're a civil rights attorney for the Department of Education, and then you're also a marriage strategist. So can you please talk to me about how you got started and what you do?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a civil rights attorney for the U.S. Department of Education. That's my day job. And I got into like sharing marriage information, marriage tips, practical tips on having healthy marriages on social media through my own personal life struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been married for 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And early on in my marriage, we struggled with kind of meshing together as one unit. We were parents. So when we got married, I was pregnant. We had a shotgun wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So when we entered into marriage, we didn't have any premarital counseling or any of that kind of preparation type of thing to have a healthy marriage. And so we struggled a lot with understanding our new roles, with being a good parent and still being a good spouse. And so I tapped a lot into trying to figure out how to be a wife. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? How do you have a healthy marriage? How do you communicate well? How do you deal with in-law issues and merging finances? And the more and more that I studied and I got us involved in different courses and conferences, I started becoming really passionate about it. And I realized our people in our age group don't know this information.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to bring this information to where they're at, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about how to have a healthy marriage or healthy relationship. And the more and more I got into it, I started bridging that civil rights piece where I said, you know what? I'm doing this for Black families. Because everything that we talk about, we want to build as a community, we want to have wealth and all that starts with the family. If the family unit is a mess, none of that matters. You're still going to you can get all the money you want, you're just going to be messy with more money.
Right.
We can create solid families. We can shift generations, with love, all the different things, and not just building wealth and all these things. So that's kind of where my heart stemmed from my own struggles, and then just a passion for helping Black love and all of that good stuff.
Man, I love it so much. I love it so much because I feel like we have similar stories and why we started doing what we're doing. Like when I hear your story, I hear like exactly what I experienced, which was me feeling like, one, there wasn't enough spaces talking about the things that I was interested in or that I felt like I needed to know about. And then two, like me feeling passionate enough about going through the things that I went through and trying to give people that kind of knowledge and those resources, specifically the Black community. And it's something that you said, talking about the Black family unit, and it all started there. And I agree with that heavily. And so we talked about how you struggled in your first few years of marriage, like just with the transition, also being pregnant, like going from being girlfriend and boyfriend to being married to also being a new mom. So first of all, why did you struggle, right? Like, what was that? What did that look like? Why were there so many struggles? And then also, how can people transition through these periods successfully?
Yeah. So I think for us, well, there's a lot of reasons why,
Mhm.
but I think ultimately it boiled down to us never truly communicating about what our expectations and desires were for our marriage as a husband, as a wife. My husband had not seen personally. I think maybe one marriage family, which was not that peaceful from what I
Mhm.
understand. It wasn't a good example. I had examples, good and bad, but we never truly had any conversations about what we wanted from each other. And so we went into it just kind of winging it. And of course, butting heads about things. And naturally, when you are, especially because we dated since we were 19 and 20. And so we had off and on periods. And it just kind of felt after a while, like, you know what? Peace.
Right, right.
But there was a longing in me and him. We had our son and we loved each other. We were just really struggling with, like, okay, how do we do life together? Because we were thrusted in it because we had no preparation.
Right.
And how we were able to move and learn and grow. And so that is one thing that I would say for those who are trying to like transition into from being boyfriend, girlfriend into spouses is number one, if you have any type of preparation to, get ready to be a husband and a wife, that's premarital counseling, therapy for yourself, unpacking all of the things that you come with as a man and as a woman. And then, of course, once you get in it, you need to have periodic check-in. Are we still on the same page about the expectations that we had before we got married? Because although I think premarital counseling and doing, therapy for yourself is amazing, the reality is that when you get married, you're probably still going to experience some things because you're still meshing two very different people's lives together, different backgrounds, different thought processes. And so it will still be necessary for you to have check-ins to make sure that you all are on the same page. And to understand, I'm a Christian, so I always tell people that the enemy would love to tear your family, your marriage apart. So you got to already know that going in, when you join with your spouse, you are causing war. You're seeking unity. You're seeking to build something new for a lot of us in our family lines. So you got to know you're coming up against a lot, and so you got to be prepared to fight against that. And a lot of times it will be issues that, like that one thing that you were like, oh, I can't deal with that. And I'm not referring to like infidelity or things, or, there's many different things people experience in their marriage. But a lot of people just assume, oh, I'm saying for better or worse, for, rich, we're all rich, poor, the vows, all that good stuff. And then when they get in the thick of it, they're like, oh, did I really mean that?
Right, right.
You got to be ready to, communicate and work through those issues. And there's no couple that's been together for years that are happily have not mastered the ability to get through those moments of transitioning to new seasons in your marriage and in your life.
Right. And that was so beautifully put. I love how you refer back to the vows where you talk about how we talk about for better or for worse, rich or poor. And then as soon as we start going through things, people are like, maybe I don't know. I don't know if this is right for me.
Mhm.
Granted, there are some things that you should definitely consider heavily depending on what your needs are, what it is. But I feel like a lot of us, like, we want people to give us grace when we make mistakes. But then as soon as somebody makes a mistake that has anything to do with us, we're quick to lash out. So I'm so glad that you talked about that.
Yes.
And so transition now, I want to know, like, what would you say to someone like me that's thinking about marriage, that has a girlfriend? What would you say to them as far as like preparation? Not even, or just has a partner. What would you say for them? What would you say to them as far as preparation? Like what would be something that some tips or
I
advice
would
that you would give
say-
them?
So one thing the couple things. One, healthy marriages are built on good friendships.
Mhm.
So obviously making sure you have a good friendship with your partner and doing things you all enjoy, having fun, whatever you consider a true friendship, whatever, maybe it's doing something new all the time, what traveling, however it may be, but also to do a lot of deep diving into understanding who you are, why you are the way that you are, why do you think the way that you do, so
Mm-hmm.
that when you come across issues in your marriage or with your partner, you're able to kind of assess, you know what, that might be me in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I may need to do a little bit more work in this area. And then you're able to give your partner grace when you also recognize the flaws in yourself, right?
Right.
I feel like a lot of people, granted, yes, we're all great. Well, I don't say it's all great catches per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people kind of get a little bit of self-absorbed, like you said, and I want you to forgive me for all of these things, or just have grace for me to learn and grow, but I'm not giving that same grace for you to go learn and grow. So I feel like having organic conversations about childhood, creating that safe space between the two of you, the sooner you can create that in your relationship, the better your marriage will be, because you open up the ability to have the healthy communication about your childhood, about why you think and do the things you do, and then you all can better understand and give each other grace in different areas as you're growing together, because you're doing life with somebody. That means life, right?
Right. Right. Yo, man, I love that. I love how you feel the same way I do when it comes to grace. And one thing that you talked about is creating that space where we're comfortable speaking to each other. And you mentioned a really great tip that I normally give people when it comes to creating space, which is check-ins, because check-ins are a neutral conversation. You're going in there with the intention of both checking in. So it's not that one person dominates the conversation, nobody else, the other person doesn't get to talk. It's a space where you both are saying, okay, I'm open to receiving what it is that you have to say to me about the relationship or about how you're feeling. So I think check-ins are a really, really, really great way, and a really underrated way for couples to create that space in which they feel comfortable communicating with each other. And it doesn't have to be like weekly. It doesn't even have to be bi-weekly. It could be monthly. It could be bi-monthly. However, whatever the cadence, they want to create. But I think check-ins are so, 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 so important.
Yeah. Yes. You can't wait until you have issues to have conversations, because then you haven't created a safe space to actually have a deep and possibly reach a resolution on that issue, if that's the only time that you talk.
Wow. And you see, and that's so important. I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people wait until it gets to the point where they can't take it anymore. Like, they're like, you know what, man, it ain't that bad right now. But if it gets to this point, I'm going to say something. And it's like, yo, bro, just say something right now. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, just say something right now. It's obviously bothering you. Just nip it in the bud right now.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be super demonstrative about it, but you can just express how you feel and let that person know, like, yo, this is how I'm feeling. And what are we going to do about it as a unit? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to take it back to what you were saying earlier, you're talking about misinformation. You said you felt like there was a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to marriage and marriage advice, and that was part of the reason as to why you became a marriage strategist and put all these tips and tricks and resources up on your profile. So what do you think are, some of the misinformation that's online, social media, some of the things that you hear? Because I think it's important for us to talk about it. We always talk about the good information, right? Like what people should do. What are some of the things that you're hearing from people about marriage that you're like, I wouldn't do that?
So first of all, let me have this as a disclaimer. When I share information, it's going to never be at the expense of anybody's well-being, safety, or anything like that. So it's never going to be saying you're just supposed to just deal with anything, accept anything. Right. However, I feel like there is at the core this approach to relationships in marriage with what am I getting out of it? what are you going to do for me? You know, the whole with what do you bring to the table? And don't get me wrong, nobody wants to marry a bum and you have no aspirations, but it seems like there's a lot of people approaching relationships and marriage already saying, what are you going to do for me? And when God designed marriage, it was actually about servanthood. And I think that people, they're not trying to hear that. You're not, but listen, if you're going to do marriage your way and it don't work out, then that's on you. But in reality, if a husband and wife are serving each other, we are both getting our needs met, which then also boils down to a lot of tit for tat that seems to be going on in our age group, in our social media, where it's like, even, and they gonna probably call me pick me for this, but even when people are like, if a man does XYZ, then a woman will naturally submit. And it's like, well, first of all, you are in control of yourself. So it is on you to decide if you want to submit. And I always tell people, you ain't got no problem submitting to them folks at your job. So don't make it sound like submission is the issue. But I mean, I'm not saying just submit to anybody, you submit to your husband, but that's one thing I feel like, yes, you need to have a man worth submitting to. Don't get me wrong. I ain't just submitted to anybody, a husband to submit to. But I know a lot of females that have well-meaning husbands, they have and are still struggling because they have deep-rooted childhood issues. They have deep-rooted fatherhood issues. And there are issues with men too. I'm always one to say, especially in our community, Black men, Black women, neither one of us are the problem.
Right.
We have all been exposed to trauma as a result of a system. Right. And so my goal is always to say, what can you do individually in yourself to better your relationship? And if everybody focus on self, we can move forward. Instead of trying to point fingers about who's wrong and who's right, we're never going to move forward with that. It's pointless because nobody's going to receive that information well. That's why we're butting heads about, men and Black men and Black women coming together. And it's like, everybody just focus on what you're supposed to do, especially if you are married or interested in marriage. You have a covenant that you're entered into with God as well as your spouse. So there's expectations for you to show up in such a way that honors God, and then let him deal with your spouse. Mm-hmm. And again, I want to clarify, this was not me coming for the ladies. That was just one example that have burnt me up a little bit. Like, no, because you're in control of yourself. Now, you want to have a conversation with your spouse about your husband, about, some issues, some concerns you have with his leadership, and you just want to let him know, I'm feeling uncomfortable with these decisions or whatever. Kiss me. Absolutely. They ain't saying just let it go. All right. You have, control and voice in your marriage and in your household equal to his, but you still have a choice in all of this.
Right.
The same way he has a choice to do right in his leadership. And honoring your voice. So yeah.
Oh my God.
You're coming for me after this one.
Nah, they can't. There's no way they can, because you just spit some bars, man. There's so much stuff that you said in there. I'm just like, yo, I hope they listening, because first you said, the first thing that caught me was when you said marriage is about servanthood. And if we are both serving each other, then our needs are being met. Bro, that right there, that is literally it.
That's it.
Once you, and the problem is, here's the problem, right? People aren't able to discern who the right person is for them. So then it becomes, what is it that you can do for me? Because I'm not sure that you're right for me, because I don't trust in my ability to find the right person. Therefore, I have to ask you this dumb question, because I don't know how to discern any other way outside of this. Because if you're taking that answer at face value, then you're not even doing the proper work to really discern the person's character, who they are, how they can be able to help you and support you. How are they supposed to explain all of that in the what do you bring to the table question?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, you can find some of this stuff out organically. And other than like, okay, I cook, I clean, and I got a good job, what can you actually respond? And like exactly. You said, anybody can say that anyway. Show me in actions. And those are the things you learn organically from getting to know somebody. That's right. But
Mm.
you already like, I'm here to figure out what you got for me. Well,
Mm-hmm. And you know what it reminds me of too? I was talking with Amani. Amani is a marriage and family therapist, and she
Mhm,
talks a lot about relationships. And we were talking about transactional relationships. That was episode 21 of the podcast.
mhm.
And that's exactly what it reminds me of. And so transactional relationships is basically, what can you do for me? This is a transaction, basically. Like, we
Yep,
go into the store, here, I give you $5, you give me some candy. And that's what people are approaching their relationships and their marriages. Like, that's the same kind of mindset that they approach
yep,
relationships and marriages with. What can you do for me? Here's $5 and I want this in return. And it's
yep,
like, nah, bro, like, you're supposed to be able to walk in the store. The person's supposed to be able to understand that you're gonna walk out with something and come back with something as well. Like,
mhm.
and you guys restock it and take care of it, take care of each other. So it doesn't have to be this transactional thing. There should be trust there. But a lot of people have that deep-rooted trauma that you talked about,
Mhm,
that childhood trauma. And then
mhm.
on top of the childhood trauma, they got the relationship trauma from past relationships that they haven't dealt with. So all of that is getting stirred into a pot and presented into this new relationship, and it's just not working well. And what it reminded me of as well is my last relationship. Like, literally, I remember she used to tell me, yo, I love cooking. I cook all the time. I was like, okay, great. Because I wanted a woman that can cook. So I'm like, okay, we ain't got no problems. You love cooking. I love eating. We good. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is no issues. But then it got to the point she's like, nah, I don't want to cook for you though, because then that makes me like, I don't want to be that kind of girl. I don't want to be looked at like as a housewife. This is not really how she said it, but this is how it came off. This is what was underneath, right? And it was her having to deal with being perceived a certain way. So she didn't want to do things because she didn't want to be perceived in a certain way. I don't want to cook for you all the time because I don't want you to think that I'm some, stay-at-home wife and that's what I'm going to be doing all the time. So instead, we're going to cook every meal together. And it's just like, yo, bro, that don't even, you get what I'm saying? Like, that don't even make sense for us. Because now you waiting on me. I'm in the kitchen messing you up. We're
Mhm.
not even moving properly as a unit just because you're moving based off of trauma or some misconceived perception of what you think should go on in the household based on what you see in society or what you saw growing up. So it's like, yo, bro, operate in your gifts, operate in your talents, operate in what you're skillful in, and then have your partner do the same. And then what you guys aren't skillful in, y'all figure out how to compromise and who
Yeah.
does what.
Yep, absolutely.
Man.
Absolutely. That's good. That's one thing I learned from my therapist a long time ago was about creating your own culture in your family, in your
Mm-hmm.
marriage, your relationship. Who cares what mom, pop, or whatever you saw? You don't have to follow certain gender roles. You don't have to, all of that. Figure out what makes y'all work and
Mm-hmm.
rock that thing, like
Right.
whatever that is.
Right. And oh man, I'm thinking about all these episodes where we talk about relationship. I think it was episode 12, How to Be a Successful Wife. I had DC on and she was talking about her relationship. She's been married for like I think 25 to 30 years.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so she was talking about how she doesn't even cook in her relationship.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't cook at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like her man cooks
He's
all the
working.
food all the time. And I was just like, yo, that's so interesting that you've been married for this long and y'all have developed a culture in which he cooks in the household.
Yeah.
And it works for y'all because that's what you guys have established as the
Yeah.
rules and the guidelines of your relationship. Man, and people don't understand this. Like, people come in with their own perceptions. Like, they come in with their own, like, okay, it has to be this. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
not this, then I don't want it. And it's
Right.
like, yo, be able to compromise here.
Right, exactly, exactly. Be okay creating your own vibe, your own culture in your relationship, in your marriage. You don't have to live up to anybody's standards. I feel like there are a lot of those who, even in it meaning well, you had maybe your parents together and you saw your parents do certain want to mimic that in your own marriage and relationship, but it doesn't work for the person you're with. But they're still a good person, right? But maybe, for example, there's some people whose mother, she did enjoy cooking, right? She maybe prepared, she went to work and prepared a meal for the whole family, and that was, but your wife is not able to do that.
Right.
And so she, maybe she's, whether it's not her gift or she's just doesn't have the capacity because of a work schedule, whatever, find a way to blend those things. Like, you're still allowed to say, I really want, a home cooked meal or whatever. But if she says, I can only, I capacity to do that 3 days a week, then be okay with that. She's not your mother. You didn't
Right.
marry your mother, you didn't marry your father.
Right.
Figure out a way to make it work for you all.
Right. And then it goes back to the point of people base their marriages off of what they saw growing up. And I just
Mhm.
put up a post where I talked about, if all you saw was dysfunction growing up, then what do you think you're going to be attracting or
Mm,
working towards in relationships? Dysfunction.
mm,
And
mm,
it goes to your point where you talked about healing,
mm,
doing that inner work before you get into a deep relationship. And then also doing work when you're in a relationship with
mm.
your partner, premarital counseling, all that kind of stuff. Because just unfortunately, because of the way that we were brought to the United States and all the things that we had to endure as a community, a lot of us grew up in dysfunction.
Yeah,
So our perception of what a healthy, healthy relationship looks like is skewed.
yeah.
It's not really healthy. A lot of us had normalized dysfunction in our households. And so now we're looking for normalized dysfunction in our relationships. And we're realizing like, this isn't what I want. And then
Right.
you get the all men are, an
Uh-huh.
all woman,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Where the good men at? Where the good women at? Right. And it's like, they out here. They're just not attracted to the dysfunction that you got going on. You get what I'm saying? Like, come
Uh-huh,
on.
uh-huh.
We got to do the work, man. We got to
Yeah,
do the work.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's always worth it. It's always, I think people may be afraid that it's not worth it, but it's
Mm,
always worth it, even if it's just you being free from
right.
whatever bondage you have been in because of the system that designed, you to come out the way that you did. Just be free for yourself, even if it doesn't work in your relationships, but it's worth it if you do.
Right. And there's another thing that you talked about earlier. You talked about how we all have our own like wants and needs. And as far as our vows, it's important for us to always remember that when we're getting married, we talked about for better or for worse, for rich or poor, right? And we had a brief conversation, a brief discussion about how for some people, they may need to assess whether or not something is worth like leaving or staying, right? So,
Mhm.
what would be your advice to someone? Because I get the question all the time in my DMs and comments, all this kind of stuff. Man, I don't know if I should stay. I don't know. I think I want to leave, and blah. What should I do? Blah blah. What is your advice to someone that asks you that?
I get those questions as well. So, first and foremost, especially if you're married, I'm always going to say give it all you can first
Mm-hmm.
before you just exit. There are a lot of people that are just facing a little, some adversity and they're like, I'm ready to go. And you didn't even try. So,
Mm-hmm.
number one, if you're married, absolutely give it all you can. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this next part will go for if you're married or in a relationship here. If you have peace about your decision, go. Nobody can tell you whether to stay or go. That's your personal decision. You are within that relationship, within that marriage. And you have, if you are supposed to be there, then you have been graced to work with whoever you have, whoever God gave you to do life with, do your relationship, whatever. But if he's saying it's time for you to go and you got peace about going, then go. But it's a very personal decision that the only person who has to live with is you. So nobody can truly answer that question for you except you.
Mm. So beautifully put. I don't have anything else to add to that. With that being said, can you please tell the people where to find you, anything that you're promoting, anything?
Absolutely. I am Mrs. Mommy Esquire on all social media. Well, I'm only on Facebook and Instagram, and I just update my Instagram. I barely get on Facebook, but that's MRSMOMMY Esquire ESQUIRE. And I am not necessarily promoting anything at the moment. I'm working on a few things, but if you would like to follow me, be on the lookout. I have a communication course for wives that I will be launching in a few weeks.
Ooh.
Yes, yes, we got to get this communication together. And I'm starting with wives because as a woman, that I know the struggles that we experience with just being married to a man. Yeah, look, listen, ladies, I understand. And then I also have some journals for wives that I plan on launching in 2022. I'm going to be doing some things for couples, but those are the coaching program, and the journal is something that is more immediate, but be on the lookout in 2022 for some more couples items.
Oh, I am excited for that.
Yeah.
Lachauna, thank you so much for being here and dropping all the gems. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to this episode. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you. So I really hope you got some valuable insight, and I hope I helped in some capacity, whether it be through the platform or the podcast. If you like to support for free, you can like this video if you're on YouTube, or you can share and subscribe regardless of what platform you're listening to the episode on. If you like to support monetarily, now we're talking, you can go to shop.expressyourselfblackman.com and get yourself some merch. We have a hoodie, we have sweatsuits, we have shirts, we have hats. We also have an ebook on how to heal, where I discuss breakups, depression and suicidal ideations, anxiety, and attachment styles. I go in depth about my story with dealing with all of those things, and then I explain how to heal in an easy guide. It's easy to follow. It's easy to go from reading to implementing. So if you're interested in that as well, it's in the shop. The book is called From Hurting to Healing, A Black Man's Guide to Feeling. So consider supporting monetarily, but regardless of how you support, I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. Sometimes I know you feel like you ain't got nobody to speak to. A shoulder to lean on, somebody you could preach to. No, you need to hear it, my brother, I love you. We got way too much to live for. We got way too much to live for. When we get it all, we want
like
more.
You lost another one.
When we get it, still we want more. I know it's hard, but you just gotta push on. Tell me for only brody, always tryna bring you. If you ever feeling down, bro, you never alone. If you ever feeling down, you can always hit my phone. If you ever feeling down, bro, you never alone. Okay, hey, I'm your shoulder to lean on. Express yourself, distress yourself. I don't wanna talk about me, tell me how you feeling well. Since you know that you alive, but this earth feeling